We're back. I am on the 7th slide. We've really only talked about a couple of them, but the first set had to do with some pictures from my life that we had previously talked about. All right, so on the 7th slide, at the very top it says the natural world. And if we were in person, I might have had a discussion with you guys where I say, what is nature? And I would ask you to kind of weigh in on this question of what is meant by nature. And you might say, all that beautiful stuff out there in the national forest, right? Or some of the rest of you might say, well, but I've got wildlife chewing on my azaleas. We do. We have deer. I live in Pittsburgh, in one of the neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, but we've got wildlife. I had this little gray cat. He's gotten a little older now, but my wife was laughing about how we have turkeys. We have big turkeys that are occasionally in our yard, and my cat Walter, he says, no, not in my yard. He chases them off. He literally chased a flock of turkeys out of the yard. So what is nature? So you might include those too. And then especially one of the things that I'm kind of interested in is life in miniature. And so you can even look at kind of like, Dr. Seuss had a book out there, right? About the little teeny tiny thing that was living in its own little teeny tiny world. Well, we have these little teeny tiny worlds like in mosses. You may have heard of water bears and tardigrades. If you use a microscope and you look at the water surrounding mosses, it's teeming with life. So you'd say, well, that's nature also. Well, what about you and I? What about this place here? It's nothing but a big anthill, right? I mean, we built, I'm living in here in a social world, but we are nature as well. So everything is nature. And the problem that we have in our world is that we think of ourselves as not being part of nature. We're just a highly destructive portion of nature in reality. So first of all, we have to understand that everything around us is nature. You, me, our homes, where we modified our world. I mean, you look at the hornet's nest or the giant termite mound or anthill, where they've created a very elaborate home. All of this is nature. And so we have this, if we're going to fix our world like the Apo Islanders did, we have to be sure and understand that we're part of it, and we are certainly right now a large part of the problem. And so we have environmental science. Now, this class that we're in is a subset of environmental science, but environmental biology. But overall, the study of our world is called environmental science. And it is a systematic, unbiased approach to understanding our world. You try to understand the problems of our world so we can offer solutions, either public health solutions, COVID, we're having this interaction with this new form of a virus. It's all nature. So what is the virus saying? It says, they're tasty. We're a resource that's available to exploitation by nature. And so we can have public health responses, or we can have environmental responses. And you know what? It's easy. The answers are not that hard to come up with. But the problem we have, it comes from pushback, right? So it's how to make them socially, politically, economically, religious, all of the kind of biases that are out there come into play when we start saying we need to fix this problem. And so on the next slide where we say, what is environmental science? You can look at a picture. There's a picture of some fish here. And I want you to look at the various captions that are around it. The various captions that are around it. We had said, what makes up environmental science? Environmental economics. So one of the problems we have is buildup of CO2 in the atmosphere from burning gasoline and coal and that kind of thing. And the problem with as you add CO2 to the atmosphere, it tends to capture more and more heat, which causes global warming. And by the way, there is absolutely, amongst the scientific community, there is unanimous agreement. Global warming is real, and it's obvious when you look at what we're doing. We have carbon that has been hidden away for millions of years underground, and it's not part of the carbon cycle. So what happens with carbon? When the food that I eat, it's made of carbon. I digest that food, and I extract the energy from it so I can stand here or sit here in front of you and wiggle around and talk. And as I exhale, what do you exhale? Any little kid will know that. Any tiny kid will tell you, I breathe in oxygen and I exhale carbon dioxide. Where does the carbon dioxide come from? The food you ate. So that Twinkie that you ate gets, the energy gets released from it, and you exhale CO2. It goes into the atmosphere. And then what happens? Plants use CO2 and sunlight energy to make sugars and plant, which, gets made into the Twinkie, right? So, but then what we're doing is we're adding carbon to this cycling carbon. So economics comes into play. So even though we know why we could reduce the amount of CO2 that we're adding to the carbon cycle if we all just drove a Tesla. Why don't you? I'd love to have a Tesla. Do you know they're 750 horsepower? I mean, that's a lot. They're super powerful. So that means fun, right? But why don't I drive one? I'm a college professor. I can't afford it. Economics comes into play. So let's keep on going. Population biology. Again, the fish. If you blow up the reef, it's not good for the fish. Anthropology and religion. What if you could feed the world if everyone ate pork chops? Well, there's a lot of religions that say, no, you can't eat pork. Or crabs. There are religions that say, oh no, you can't eat crabs. So, and I'm not bashing them, because the reality is that isn't the answer to saving the world. But you have to overcome these kinds of hurdles. So anthropology, religion, I remember seeing a thing where people were, studying some group where they were eating rats. And the scientists were like, oh my God, you eat rats? And they say, yeah, but, I hear you eat frog legs, And so to them, both of them sound kind of gross to me, although I have eaten frog legs. But anyway, so then there's the chemistry of it all, that CO2 and how it captures energy. Ecology is all of the life in the world and how it interacts with each other plus its environment. And politics. Politics play a huge role. So even though we can easily come up with answers, it's not easy to implement. That's what we're really saying, and that's why we continue to threaten our own livelihood with the problems that we could easily solve. On the next slide, I thought about stopping right there, but then I thought, no, I'm going to segue into the next little section here for a minute, and where it's the slide is marked 1.2 Problems and Opportunities. This one right here. Now, when you look at it, what is one of the major problems in the world? When you look at this, you say, oh, that's population growth. We are growing our human population like crazy. Again, it would be so easy. Just stop having so many babies. But it's not easy to make it happen. The answer is easy. Have fewer babies. How many babies should you have? If you say, we're at 7-something billion people in the world, and we say that's the perfect number in the world. So what you want then would be what? 0 population growth, right? And so if you have a boy and a girl get together and they have babies, how many babies would it be to where you would basically stop increasing? You have 2 people come together, and if they had 2, mom and dad eventually pass away and they're replaced by 2. So it ends up 0 population growth is like 2.1 babies, because not everyone survives to adulthood, but about 2. But the problem is we have some parts of the world where we have below replacement level, less than enough babies to maintain the population, and then other places where we have way too many people. So the problem is, if we're gonna, right now, we've got enough farms, we've got enough ocean, and so forth, to where we have enough food to feed everyone in the world. Absolutely. But if we keep on going, there's a limit to how many people and how much life can be supported by our world. So we have to bring this under control. So this is the first of the problems we're faced with today. And if you look at the graph underneath, this second graph right here with the baby on it, you can see that we have the population of how many babies are on this side of the graph right here. And you can see in the world in the 1950s, typically you had 5 children. And then you get over to the year 2000, and worldwide, we're like 3. But then if you look at there's some other lines on there where they're way above, and these are the undeveloped countries. And so we have undeveloped countries that have way more babies than replacement. And then some of the developed countries are having too few. So this is the first of the problems facing our world today. And I've got to stop now because I've gone 14 minutes.